This is the story of Purim. Are you ready? Once upon a time, long, long ago, in a town called Shushan,
there lived a man called Uncle Morty, or Mordecai. He was a good dude. He had a lot of friends
and always tried to help people and do the right thing. Now, Mordecai lived in the town of Shushan with his niece Esther, and they were Jewish, just like I am.
Just like I am. And the king of the town of Shushan was a man named Achashverosh.
He was a powerful king with lots of money. He lived in a big palace. And one day, he decided to have a royal party for all of his friends. So he sent out invitations for everyone to come.
The king's wife's name was Vashti.
And Vashti, she decided to have her own separate party just for her girlfriends. No men allowed.
But the king did not like that idea. So the king banished Vashti from the kingdom forever.
She moved away, never to be seen again. But then the king had no wife, and then he got lonely.
So he decided to find a new wife to make her the queen. He came up with an idea to have a contest to find a queen who would be best for the role. She had to be pretty and smart and funny, but not funny looking.
Then Uncle Morty heard about this contest, so he ran and told his niece Esther all about it. Esther was pretty and smart, and she had a really great smile, and so her Uncle Morty absolutely knew she would win.
But Esther was not really into entering the contest. She felt it was below her in many ways.
But her Uncle Morty finally persuaded her to go. He said, "Try it. You'll like it."
A few weeks later, the contest was held at the king's castle, and women came from all over to compete in it. And King Ahasuerus watched every single one of them.
Some of the contestants had a lot of talent and were also very pretty. That made the king smile. Other contestants were not, and some of the women should not have come at all.
The contestants all tried different things to make the king smile. When it was Esther's turn to compete, she stood in front of the king and sang a beautiful song. The king smiled at her, and then Esther smiled back. He liked her a lot, and sure enough, she won the contest. King Ahasuerus picked Esther to be the queen. They were married, and Esther packed up to live in the palace. But there was one thing that Esther did not tell the king. Esther failed to mention to him that she was Jewish. A few weeks later, Uncle Morty was in the town of Shushan and found out that two guys who lived in Shushan were planning to steal the king's royal crown.
They were going to sneak into the place and take it, sell it on eBay for a lot of money.
Mordecai knew that this was wrong. He told the king's royal guards about these guys, and they were going to get in big trouble.
The king had a royal secretary who kept notes of everything that happened in the kingdom each day. And the secretary wrote down in the royal record that Uncle Morty had saved the king's crown from being stolen, so that nobody would forget that he did the right thing.
Now, also in Shushan, there was a really bad man who worked for the king.
this man was way worse than the two guys who had tried to steal the king's crown.
And this guy's name was Haman. Boo!
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 Boo, Haman.
Haman was an advisor to the king, but Haman walked around and acted like he was the king. What a pompous jerk.
Because he said everybody must bow to him because the King Ahasuerus told him he could do whatever he likes.
When you see me, you have to bow down to me to show respect. And if you don't bow to me, you will be punished. Now, this was a big problem because, in case you didn't know, Jews don't bow down to anyone but Hashem. We are very inflexible people. You should see us at one of our board meetings. Also, remember that Uncle Mordecai was Jewish, and he was not a king or a prince.
Now one day, Haman and Uncle Morty were walking past each other on the street, and Haman expected him to bow down, but Uncle Morty did not bow. He refused. Haman said to him, "Don't you know who I am? I'm the powerful Haman. Bow to me." Uncle Morty looked at him and said, "I am Jewish.
He wouldn't bow down to Haman
I do not bow down to anyone but God.
because he only bows down to God."
And you, sir, are not my God. Haman became really angry. He immediately went to see King Ahasuerus and decided to make up a story to get the Jewish people into trouble because Uncle Morty would not bow down to him.
So Haman told the king that there were people in Shushan who were causing trouble. The king looked confused. "Trouble in my kingdom? Are you sure, Haman?" asked the king. "Oh, yes, your majesty," said Haman. "The Jewish people of Shushan are all packing their things right now and are planning to move into your palace. They're going to eat all of your food. They want free Wi-Fi to stream movies in your royal den all day and night.
And they will complain a lot. Trust me on this."
The king became pretty worried. Haman convinced the king to send the Jews away from Shushan so that they couldn't bother him. And Haman did this all because Uncle Morty and the Jews wouldn't bow down.
But sure enough, Uncle Mordecai found out that Haman's plan, and he knew that he had to send a message to his niece Esther, the queen, who was living in the royal palace. He knew she would help the Jewish people.
But let's also remember that the king and Haman didn't know that Queen Esther was an MOTT, a member of the tribe.
She had a secret that she was a Jew.
She was Jewish, so Uncle Mordecai sent a secret message to the queen, and the message read like this.
Dearest darling Esther, the Jewish people are in trouble. Haman wants to send away from Shushan forever. Please help us. Speak to the king and have him stop Haman from this evil plan. And I miss you. Send money. Love, Uncle Mordecai.
When the queen read the letter, she was very upset and angry and worried. "I have to be brave," she said to herself. "I have to save my people."
What will I do? She asked herself. Then she got an idea. She went to the faraway market of Fairway, bought a whole bunch of deliciously prepared foods and served it as a feast for the king. Then she invited Haman to come to the royal castle and join them for this great feast, even though she knew he was the enemy.
Queen Esther was a very smart lady and knew what she was doing. So the night came for the big dinner party, and everything was really yummy. The king was so happy that the Queen Esther made this fancy dinner, and that his favorite advisor, Haman, was also there. Good times, he thought.
Then the king asked Esther how he could thank her. Esther said, "Your Majesty, it would please me greatly if all three of us could dine again tomorrow night for another great feast."
The king's eyes went very wide. He was thrilled.
Haman was also really happy too, because he felt very special getting to dine with the king and queen 2 nights in a row.
Much later that night, after the fancy feast, the king woke up from his royal bed and couldn't fall back to sleep. Whenever the king could not sleep, he liked to open the royal record book and catch up on what happened in his kingdom from past days. It was kind of like Facebook in a book.
And then something in the book caught his attention. The king read about those 2 guys that were going to steal his crown, and that Uncle Morty had saved the day. Wow, that's awesome, said the king. The king went to bed, and the next morning he went to the royal reward givers and asked them, when Mordecai saved my crown from being stolen, was he rewarded? No, Your Majesty, they said. Mordecai was not given a reward.
The king realized that Uncle Morty had been dissed. So the king asked his royal advisor, Haman, come to see him. And the king said, Haman, I must honor a man who has done the right thing and has made my royal life much better. What do you think I should do?
Haman began to smile because he misunderstood. He was thinking to himself, what huge honor would I want from the king? Finally, Haman said, Your Majesty, if you really want this person to feel special, dress him in a fancy robe, put a golden crown on his head, and let him be pulled around by a man yelling, This is what the king does to honor a very important person. The king smiled. He thought that was an excellent idea. Then the king told Haman to organize it to honor Uncle Mordecai. And there was Haman pulling Uncle Mordecai around for everyone to see.
Haman was furious. And that night, at the second royal feast in the palace, the king, Queen Esther, and Haman were once again eating another amazing feast.
Haman was not eating much. He was not very happy. Then things got even worse. In the middle of dinner, the queen stood up and said, My dear sweet king, I'm going to be sent away. Then the king stood up and said, What? Said the king.
Why? Who is sending you away? The queen pointed to Haman. Haman stood up. Me? No, Your Majesty. No, Your Highness. I am only sending the Jews out of the kingdom. Of course you can stay.
And then the queen revealed her secret, that she was Jewish too, and that Mordecai, the Jew, was her uncle. If the Jews are forced to leave Shushan, then I must go too, she said to the king.
King Ahasuerus became really angry at Haman. Haman was shocked. He couldn't speak. The king told Haman that he was fired and called to the royal guards over to take Haman to the out of the palace and never to return again.
Then the king brought Uncle Mordecai into the palace, where he was reunited with his niece Esther. The king asked him to be his new advisor to take Haman's place. This was a great honor. The queen and her uncle hugged and rejoiced, and from that day on, the Jews could stay in Shushan forevermore.
And they lived happily ever after. The end.